Hi and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. Okay, this is Mailbag, common feature of the channel. It's where I attempt to answer questions that you guys have left on the channel, or if I can't answer them, I have a good go at answering them, or I throw them out to the wider Tubi community to try and answer on behalf of somebody who's raised the question. Now, we'll get into this mailbag. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next one comes from Mr. Margaret Scratcher, and this is in response to, but what do we know about the Behringer LM drum video I did in June 2021? And I don't know whether this is a made up name or his name is Margaret, and I do know Margaret is some guy's name, so and he writes, with regards to the ARM tech, ARM produces a FPGA, this gets a bit technical, which at a basic level is a chip that can be configured to behave like another chip, often used in prototype new designs, but also can be used to emulate within hardware old or obsolescent chips. There are hardware Amiga emulators based on FPGA that include 68K processors, custom chipset, etc. And actually, funny enough, if you go over to watch the Retro Man Cave, I'll put a link down below, the Retro Man Cave talks quite a lot about enhancing your Amigas and your Atari STs with these types of devices, these imitation chips, where you can actually make the thing run quicker. You can load stuff in using slightly different technologies, but this is kind of the technology that they use. Anyway, side point. If this is what Behringer are talking about, then it makes absolute sense regards to the digital projects, where they could use an FPGA to recreate no longer available processors that are integral to the sound of the various digital bits of the kit. Now that's a key point. It really is a key point. Or even in the case of where the equivalent processors are still available, you could have a standardized main board for a range of digital PCM based drum machines, but just program the FPGA to act like the equivalent hardware of whatever machine you're trying to emulate. And this is the Roland Boutique, and is probably also at the core of the Behringer polysynths that are coming out and the Behringer drum machines that are coming out. So the RD9, the Lindrum, what we're talking about, the PPG Wave is one of the machines that Behringer are looking at. The Prophet 10 is another machine there. Was it Prophet 10? Yeah. The OBXA. These are all machines that they have muted. Oh, Yamaha CS10. No, CS10? CS80, sorry. But these are all machines that Behringer are working on at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a common logic board using something like this, and you know, just reprogramming it to effectively do what Roland has done with the boutiques. But thank you for the wider explanation of the possibilities of the ARM solutions that Behringer might be using, and I think it's worthwhile for other people on the channel to understand, well, at a very high level, how this technology works. Next question comes from A Sharps, and this was in response to replacing the battery on your Korg T1, a video I did way back in September 2017, just after acquiring the Korg T1. And A Sharps writes, I believe the T1 was the only one of the series that really had the ability to use PCM data. It was one of the selling points in addition to the 88 weighted keys. My T1 was over $4,200, but still I use it as my main controller almost 25 years later. And I have to be honest and say, I think the T1 is a superb controller. You may hear me reference a guy called Bruce, who lives in California. He has two T1s, which he uses all the time. And they will just troop on if you look after them. And that's the key point. But I am assuming that you're referring to the I have to read this, EXK-T PCM RAM board that came as standard on the T1 and was an optional extra on the T2 and T3. Although if you bought the T2X and the T3X, you got the soundboard included. And funny enough, I actually have one of those for sale. Anyway, so if you've got a T2 or a T3 and you want to upgrade it to be able to read all the discs that T1 can read, and you want to contact me, DM me on the channel or go to Instagram, Facebook, and I will dig it out and I will sell it to you if you want it. Now bear in mind, if you live overseas it could cost you a bit, but if you live in the UK it probably costs you about £5 to get the postage. Anyway, it's unfortunate the way that this board is described. All M and T series synths use PCM. That's the bottom line. You know, the base generation system for the M's and T's was PCM. The board, however, allows externally sampled waveforms to be imported into the synth and used. It only has 0.5 of a mega memory. You think about where we are now, you know, we talk about terabytes of memory. 0.5 of a gig of RAM back in the early 90s was expensive though. So the T1 was built as an absolute workhorse and came with a hefty price tag. I've got to be honest and say, I picked mine up for, I won't say actually how much I picked mine up for because it's unfair for the guy who sold it me. And what I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted by the card in the camera filling up, was the T1 actually is an incredible workhorse. And I'm not going to say how much I picked mine up for because it was unfair for the guy who sold it to me, who thought that it was probably more broken than it was. But the reality is that I spent about £200 on it, and I got an absolutely stunning keyboard following all the bits and bobs I had to do to restore it to where it needed to be, including a new display. So I agree with you that it is a phenomenal keyboard, and I don't disagree with what you've said. One of the things I will say is I think I found that somebody who's going to make me the final bits, which is hardwood ends for the T1, because my ends are a bit knocked about. So if that does come off and they are as good as I think they're going to be, then I shall put links in the videos to allow you guys to go and order the same stuff if you so wish. Hopefully that's answered that one.